At the edge of Utah and Colorado, where desert meets mountain and river carved through stone, lies one of the most dramatic landscapes of the American West. And it's one that people don't often talk about with the same reverence as some of our more famous national parks. This is Dinosaur National Monument. Today it's known for two things: canyons so vast they seem endless, and the fossilized bones of creatures that walked the earth 150 million years ago. But before paleontologists uncovered its Jurassic past, this land was home to a woman who lived almost a century in its shadow. A woman whose life tied together outlaws, hardship, resilience, and the fierce independence of the frontier. For most of us, the West is a myth, all romance and outlaws, adventure and dust. But for Josie Bassett Morris, it was real. Her story's as much about the land as it is about her. Because in this place, you didn't just live on the land, you lived with it, or not at all. Dinosaur National Monument sits where the Yampa and Green Rivers slice through the uplifted layers of the Colorado Plateau. For millions of years, waters cut its way through stone, revealing cliffs striped with color, reds, oranges, creams, and purples. And the canyons here plunge up to 3,000 feet deep, the walls sheer and unforgiving. It's a land of contrast. Summers are blistering hot with temperatures over 100 degrees, while winters can drop below zero with snow drifting high against the cliffs. Rain is scarce, but when it comes with fury. Flash floods that reshape the ground overnight. The winds sweep across the sagebrush valleys, carrying dust and grit, bending trees and wearing away rock. It's also a place of silence. Stand at an overlook above Echo Park or Harper's Corner, and you'll hear nothing but the slow churn of the river. At night, the skies explode with stars, the Milky Way spilling across the blackness, untouched by city light. This was the world Josie Bassett Morris chose to make her home. I'm Jason Epperson, and this is Parkography. More in a moment, but first, this episode is sponsored by Slinky Stove. Slinky Stove is the patented collapsible fire pit that stays intact when packed. It's perfect for RVs and car camping or in your own backyard. It sets up in seconds, providing you with smokeless airflow rings and a clean burning fire. No more dancing around campfire smoke. Inexpensive and packed with extras, the Slinky Stove offers a 3-level cooking system that gives you flexibility, whether it's morning coffee or evening campfire chili. And with contained ash, cleanup's quick, just the way it should be on public lands. Order yours now at slinkystove.com or click the link in the description. Josie Bassett was born in 1874 in Arkansas, but her family moved west when she was still a child, settling in Browns Park, an isolated valley at the meeting of Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. The valley is ringed by mountains, its grasslands fed by the Green River. It was a natural crossroads, both for ranchers and the outlaws who drifted through looking for shelter. Josie and her sister Ann grew up here, learning to ride, rope, and raise cattle. Their father, Herb Basset, was well known for the sale of beef and horses to passing outlaws of the day, including Blackjack Ketchum, Elsie Lay, Kid Curry, Will News Carver, Ben Kilpatrick, and the notorious Butch Cassidy. The years that followed would see both Josie and Ann tied up in a complicated circle of relationships. By 1893, Ann was involved romantically with Butch Cassidy, and Josie entered a relationship with his closest friend, Elsie Lay. When Cassidy was sent to prison in 1894, Ann turned to Ben Kilpatrick, and by the time Cassidy was released 18 months later, Josie was in a relationship with Will News Carver, although she ended things when he became involved with an outlaw, Laura Bullion. Josie then turned to Cassidy until he once again formed a relationship with Ann. But despite the seemingly constant changes in romantic companionship, there was never any indication of animosity between the Basset girls and Cassidy's Wild Bunch gang. In 1896, several powerful cattlemen approached the Bassets with the objective of purchasing their ranch. The sisters refused, which led to their harassment by the Cattlemen's Association, although they were often quick to fight back by rustling cattle from their opponents. Ultimately, however, it was the fear of retribution from the outlaws that kept the cattlemen at bay. By 1904, the Wild Bunch gang had faded, and most of its members were either killed or captured. Several reportedly visited Anne and Josie over the next many years, but Josie divorced 4 husbands in a time when divorce was nearly unheard of, even allegedly running one off with a frying pan. She'd have 2 sons with husband Carl McKnight, Crawford and Herbert Chick McKnight. But while romance novels often paint outlaw connections in glamorous tones, the truth was more complicated. Life in Browns Park was grueling. The winters were long, the summers harsh, and survival depended on skill, toughness, and community. Josie carried all 3. In 1924, Josie Bassett moved to nearby Vernal, Utah, and built a cabin at Cub Creek, which is now on the Utah side of Dinosaur National Monument, where low valleys stretch towards sandstone cliffs. Cottonwoods line the creek, and wildflowers bloom in spring against a backdrop of desert stone. To the east, tilted layers of rock mark the Earth's upheaval, each stratum a chapter in deep time. Here, Josie created her own world. She planted orchards of apricot and apple trees. She raised chickens, tended a large garden, and ran cattle on the land. She wore trousers instead of dresses, chopped her red hair short, and worked along hired hands like any other rancher. To many visitors, her cabin was a welcome outpost of warmth and food. To Josie, it was proof she could carve a life from this unforgiving ground. But the land demanded resilience. During the Great Depression, when money and food were scarce, Josie gave away what she could: venison, biscuits, a bed for the night. Sometimes she skirted the law, poaching game out of season. Stories say she once invited a game warden in for coffee and biscuits just after he arrived to arrest her, and by the end of the visit, he let her go without a warning and a full belly. She brewed apricot brandy and chokecherry wine during Prohibition, not for herself, but to help her family scrape by. She raised her 2 sons, outlived most of her husbands, and faced down neighbors in court when accused of rustling cattle. Through it all, she leaned on the same traits that the land required: toughness, resourcefulness, and unshakable independence. For the last 20 years of her life, Josie lived at Cub Creek without running water, electricity, or even a phone. By then, the outside world had changed. Cars roared along the highways, televisions flickered in living rooms, astronauts were preparing to reach for the moon. But at Cub Creek, time stood still. In 1964, Josie died at the age of 90, one of the last living links to Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch. Her cabin still stands today, shaded by cottonwoods, the fence line stretching into the sage. To walk the trails around it is to step back not just into her life, but into a chapter of the American West that feels impossibly far away, and yet somehow close at hand. Dinosaur National Monument is one of the most underrated units in the Park Service system. On the Colorado side, canyon country dominates: sheer cliffs, remote valleys, and overlooks that reveal the Yampa and Green Rivers cutting through the heart of the plateau. Whitewater rafters tackle the Class 3 and 4 rapids here, some of the wildest water in the West. Hikers disappear into the labyrinths of stone. Campers sleep beneath the skies untouched by city glow. On the Utah side, the focus shifts to deep time. At the Quarry Exhibit Hall, more than 1,500 dinosaur bones remain in the rock face, exposed for visitors to see. It's so different from what you might experience in a museum. They're still there in the rock. Massive femurs, spines, and skulls of Jurassic giants, creatures that once thundered across the same area, though it was entirely different back then. And in between, the monument protects petroglyphs carved by the Fremont people nearly 1,000 years ago. Spirals, animals, and figures etched into the sandstone stand as reminders that long before Josie, long before outlaws and ranchers, humans still lived and thrived here. Dinosaur National Monument is more than a place of fossils and canyons. It's a land that's demanded grit and imagination from all who've lived here, from ancient people to 19th century outlaws to a ranch woman who built her life from scratch in its canyons. Josie Bassett Morris lived in this place not as a visitor, but as a part of it. And her story, like the bones in the quarry walls and the petroglyphs on the cliffs, endures in stone and memory. I'm Jason Epperson, and this is Parkography. Thanks so much for being here. If you like what we do, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.